Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday, my dudes. So we got a lot to talk about. The President of the United States doesn't seem to be doing so well. And before we get into all of that, once again, I want to thank everybody for showing up. I want to thank everybody for earlier this week pushing us over 1 million subscribers. That is a huge milestone for everybody that is joining us right now. Please, if you're not already subscribed, do so. Lots of great content every day, including these live streams Monday through Thursday at 9 a.m. Central Time. Love being one of the first folks out there every morning to tell you what's happening in this crazy world of ours. So, that's always fun. But here we go, folks. We got a lot to deal with, mostly involving the brain rot that the President of the United States seems to be suffering from. On Monday evening, going into Tuesday morning, Donald Trump got on Truth Social and posted 150 times within the span of about an hour. 150 times in an hour. So you could do the quick math on that. That's averaging roughly 2.5 posts every minute Monday evening, heading into Tuesday morning. The President of the United States, this 79-year-old elderly gentleman, was up all night posting on social media like some kind of, person who is on something that prevents them from sleeping almost, I guess it would seem. But this is not normal behavior. And the worst part is not that he posted this many times. It's that none of them were cohesive, right? He didn't put out 150 messages about the economy, right? The topics were all over the place. Nothing, backing the other one up. Just completely random, rapid fire thoughts that this man was having with no cohesion whatsoever. And that's the part that I think the media, in discussing this story, has totally ignored, because that's the important part. Not that it happened, but that none of these thoughts were connected in any way. And that's a symptom. That's what we call that. That is a symptom of psychological problems. And I did some digging here, did some research. I have often said that Donald Trump's policies kind of seem a little bit schizophrenic. And so I decided to do some digging into what schizophrenia, really entails. And it turns out that when you go through the list of symptoms for schizophrenia, he meets every single one of them. I mean, every single one of them. This man serving as President of the United States meets all the criteria for schizophrenia. Let me read this to you. Psychotic symptoms include hallucinations, experiencing sensory perceptions that aren't real, such as hearing voices or seeing things that aren't there. I'm starting with that one because that one's a little iffy, right? I don't know if Donald Trump is suffering from any kind of hallucinations, but again, that's just one of many. Delusions is another symptom. Strong false beliefs that are not based in reality, even when evidence to the contrary is presented. That's a symptom of schizophrenia. Does that sound like Donald Trump, right? Delusions? Believing false things even when you present evidence showing that what they believe is false? Disorganized thinking and speech. Difficulty organizing thoughts, which can lead to jumbled or incoherent speech. Again, sound like anybody? Reduced expression of emotion. Appearing emotionless or having a flat affect. Like when you're having a press conference and the guy 5 feet away from you collapses and faints and you just stand there like a robot doing nothing. All right. So we're pretty much right on par here. Lack of motivation, difficulty starting or completing goals. Like all of his policies that change every now and then, not every now and then, every, you know, every hour. Um, Lack of motivation. He doesn't do anything anymore. He's not out there doing rallies. That also comes with social withdrawal. He's not being publicly visible. He's limiting his time with the press. It's all very structured so that he can have his alone time, whatever. They can't get too close to him. He's sitting down all the time. And of course, another symptom of schizophrenia, cognitive impairment. Problems with attention, memory, and executive functions like decision making. Now, I am no psychiatrist. I am no psychologist. But I am an intelligent person. I know what I see with this guy. I do have a DSM-5 handy. And I've taken plenty of psychology courses. At one point, I was going back and trying to major. Sorry, not major. I was trying to get my master's in psychology, but unfortunately, costs of everything, just couldn't afford it. Nevertheless, I'm, kind of well-versed in it. Don't have a PhD, but, I've taken more classes than the average person. But this kind of feels spot on, right? I mean, going through that list of symptoms, that perfectly describes Donald Trump. And I think the big thing is that the media needs to start paying attention, not just to the words he says, but about the fact that none of the words fit together, right? This sentence doesn't fit with this sentence. This thought is not cohesive with this thought. These are two completely separate things. It's not a weave, as Trump calls it. It's a man with a schizophrenic way of thinking, and that is how they need to start addressing it. These posts on social media are not posts. They are symptoms, which is what I have been saying for years. A couple super chats I want to get to real quick. Pete the Rock 2002 says, it makes me wonder how much the MSM is being paid to sweep Trump's medical and psychological situations under the rug. He's one outburst away from a stroke that would paralyze him. I think, you're kind of right on there. The media is intentionally ignoring this. They don't want to make any of the claims, because they're afraid he's going to sue them. They'd win, he's not going to be able to prove that he doesn't have these cognitive conditions. But he did a good job in his first 6 months of getting all these media companies to fall in line with him. So now they're afraid to talk about this stuff that desperately needs to be talked about. Another super chat here. This one is from Hollywood 113807, who says, good day from Australia, Farron. Congrats on the big 1 million subs. If you have time, what are your thoughts on Newsom Crockett ticket? Thank you. I said repeatedly, I think that's pretty badass. I've mentioned it in passing in videos. I'm not saying like you weren't paying attention, but no, I think that's phenomenal. I think that'd be really great. I think Jasmine Crockett absolutely deserves, a place on the ticket for whoever is going to be there. And the reason I say place on the ticket is because at this point in her career, I do not think Jasmine Crockett is top of the ticket. I think she will absolutely get there, but I do think a very strong vice presidential contender at this point. And then Jasmine Crockett moves to the top after that, definitely. And I'm not 100% on Newsom either. I do like him a lot, obviously. I prefer J.B. Pritzker. I will say that. I'm more of a Pritzker than a Newsom guy in terms of, who I think would do a better job. So, if we're talking about the potential governors there, I would go with Pritzker over Newsom. I just think that would be the right thing. However, we also have to take into account, and I know this is stupid and silly, but it is a thing. They've done studies on this. People do vote based on looks. It's not always a huge factor, but if you factor that in, Newsom is obviously the guy. So it really is kind of a weird thing. Somebody posted here, Newsom Pritzker. I like that idea too. I think that would be a great ticket, or Pritzker Newsom, right? We don't have to go ahead and decide the order just yet. And I do think we're going to see both of those people start campaigning. I really do. Um, I don't know if AOC is going to throw her name out yet, but we're going to see. Maybe she's there, maybe she's not. And I'm talking about her personally. Maybe she's there, maybe she's not. Do I think she'd do a great job? Hell yeah, she would. And it's same thing with Jasmine Crockett. When you have these, little bit younger people who don't have, years and years and years of experience, they sometimes want to get a little more under their belt. So I think that's great. And I think we saw a lot of that, obviously, with Pete Buttigieg. Now, you might hate me for this, but Buttigieg was in over his head. Goes from being a mayor of a city with 200,000 people to transportation secretary. Now, is he better than the guy we have right now? F yeah, he is. But he kind of got thrown into the mix, in a bad situation, granted. Like, we were already dealing with the supply chain shortages, but we needed somebody with a little bit more experience on the national scale to really handle that crisis. And a lot of it did, of course, undeservedly fall into Buttigieg, but I think that may have damaged him to the point where I don't know that he would be able to throw his hat in the ring again for president. So that's, a problem. So as I said, Trump puts out these 150 posts. He's up all night doing this. So then what happens? That brings me to the next story. Well, we all know what happened next, because on Tuesday, after getting no sleep, he has a cabinet meeting. And we've all seen the videos. What happened repeatedly to Donald Trump during that cabinet meeting? He kept falling asleep. In fact, one time, this is the funniest part, he falls asleep right after bragging about acing his cognitive test. It's like, I'm so great, I am so smart, I aced it, nobody else can ace it. I mean, like 99% of people fail the test, but I aced it and I'm so great. Just out like a light. And then he fell asleep again. And then again. And then again. Repeatedly, constantly, all throughout this cabinet meeting, while everybody's talking about, we love you, you're so great. Dude's just napping his butt away. Like, just gone. He's off in dream world thinking about his next posts on social media. This guy cannot stay awake to save his life. And maybe it is like a child. You're up too late on your electronics. Somebody in the White House is going to have to put some screen time, parental controls on his phone, because this is kind of getting out of hand and it's humiliating, especially since he's the one who came up with the, quote, Sleepy Joe nickname for President Biden. Now, here's another super chat here. Thank you very much. Michelle Woods says, wow, my first live with you, Farron. So happy. Well, thank you very much for that. Mr. Canadian 1455 super chat. Thank you. Says Sleepy DJ Trump. Biden is no longer the sleepy one. Absolutely correct. Trump is the guy that keeps falling asleep publicly. Okay. He's falling asleep during important events. That seems like a problem, right? Don't we want a president of the United States that can at least stay awake through a meeting or stay awake through a speech, or maybe not have a mini stroke during the 9/11 memorial? Like, did everybody forget about that, by the way? Donald Trump sitting there on 9/11 and his face is like drooping down, which is so obviously a mini stroke, not a full-blown stroke. But all of this added up. And the media, again, is just still like, no, this is what a president is supposed to do. It's utter insanity. Super chat here from VMan29397 says, what will happen to the MAGA acolytes post-Trump? I say this because my family in Puerto Rico is suffering under the MAGA governor, Jennifer Gonzalez. I really do think MAGA fizzles out after this, because we're already seeing the fracturing. It doesn't matter who they are, where they are. This whole MAGA movement, kind of like the Tea Party movement that began, back in 2009-ish, it's going to fizzle out. There's going to be the factions fighting one another. We're going to go and we're going to be this. Okay, well, we're going to be this. And then MAGA is just gone. Another super chat here. Thank you very much from Sumi Long says, it really is the emperor wears no clothes. We all see it. but no one is saying anything from the media. I agree. And I use that analogy constantly because we all see that this man is marching down the street naked as a jaybird. And the media is like, no, he is wearing the finest robes made of silk and that we've ever seen. He's gorgeous. I don't want to look at it, but they know. They're just too afraid to say it because he's made them afraid by filing lawsuits that they would have won if they had just said, bring it on, dude. But they're cowards. Clicks and ratings and views and ads. It's all these people care about. Another one here from Jimmy J. Voyager, thank you very much, says, I'd really like to see a Jon Stewart for president run. Your thoughts? Jon Stewart is exceptionally intelligent, absolutely. I am always going to be hesitant about saying that somebody who has no political experience should immediately become president of the United States. That always gives me reservations. I'm not fully on board with it. Again, I think Jon Stewart is definitely intelligent enough to do it, but let's not forget Jon Stewart started out as a comedian and actor, not a political commentator. Okay, so I know he's great and I do love him, but I say pump the brakes on that just a little bit. He is great where he is, and we don't want to take that away. We don't want to lose it. We saw what happened when we lost Jon Stewart, so we kind of need to keep that. Another super chat here from Scorpius ZA says, my only concern with MAGA fizzling out is that it is replaced with something worse, something like Nick Fuentes. Fuentes does not have the same kind of pull. There's never going to be, in modern day America, enough of a white nationalist type movement to really take hold of power. I do think we've moved beyond that as a country. Maybe I'm wrong. I know we still have a ton of racism and a ton of closet racists out there, but I don't think we have enough to make something like that a viable political movement at this time in this country. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm not. Member comment here, thank you very much, says, my money is on Trump spontaneously combusting. Anything is possible at this point, folks. I mean, who knows? Maybe he's going to fall asleep. Maybe he's going to, get on social media, Truth Social, for the next 15 hours and just rapid fire posts like he's just been up all night on Ritalin. Nobody knows. Nobody knows if his heart is just going to randomly explode at any given second. Or maybe he's going to have more of those mini strokes. They usually do kind of happen in clusters. And once they begin, if you do not change your lifestyle, they become a thing you have to deal with until you get the big one. And then it's lights out. I have had family members that had, were suffering from mini strokes, and they made lifestyle changes and it stopped. But if you don't, if you remain overweight, if you have the poor diet, if you do not have the exercise, the mini strokes definitely do add up. And I guess, I have a very large extended family. And so a lot of these issues, the health issues that I've seen with Donald Trump, I have seen every single one of them reflected in different members of my family. So a lot of these times I am able to speak from experience and speak from things I have personally seen and dealt with regard to him. Super chat here from Ninja Vestos says, sending support from the UK. What are your thoughts on the secretary situation? Do you think the news media needs reform? News media absolutely needs reform, but that's not going to happen because corporations obviously own the media. Corporations are in the business of making money. They're not in the business of pissing people off. They're not in the business of keeping people informed. They're in the business of making money. So whatever makes money. And they do seem to think right now that, well, Republicans control everything, so let's be a little lighter on the Republicans. And we saw that through the first, I would say, 8-9 months of this administration. We're starting to see a little bit of a correction right now, though. So they are starting to pick up more on things. The New York Times, obviously, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, had that big piece about, Trump's mental health. physical health as well. So they are starting to get it, I think. Another super chat from Mr. Canadian 1455 says, no celebrity or regular citizen should run for president, especially with no experience. But if they do, there should be a very lengthy test. Keep up the good work, Farron. Here's some money. Well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. And I do agree. I think we need people with experience in these jobs, especially considering the amount of work the next person is going to have to do to fix all of this. Okay, we can't bring in somebody, no matter how smart they are, with no actual political experience with these kinds of things, because they need to know how the government works, not just from a textbook perspective, but from an experience perspective, right? Like, you can give a 15-year-old a book that teaches them everything about what a car does, how you're supposed to drive a car, all of that, and they can read that book for 5 years. But that doesn't make them as experienced as somebody who actually got behind the wheel of the car and drove it for 5 years. Okay. I think that is the best way to look at that. You may know everything about the car that the book says, but what you don't know how to do is those split-second decisions that pop up when you're behind the wheel. You can read about it all you want, but until you're in that situation and you actually see the options literally in front of you on the road, you don't know, and you can't know. Experience in some ways does outweigh the book knowledge of it. So, I would love them to have both, obviously, but the experience part of it is something we're going to have if anybody wants to be able to rebuild what this guy has destroyed in just 11 short months. So here's the thing. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in today. It looks like we've got a lot more viewers than usual. So let me just remind everybody once again, if you are not already subscribed, please do so. We certainly appreciate it. I love the growth that we have seen this week. This, of course, is my first week just focusing on Fair and Balanced. I am no longer doing videos over at Ring of Fire anymore. So thank you all for that. Oh, and by the way, before I get to some more comments here, if you're not following me across social media, please go do that as well. And it's easy. I'm at Farron Balanced. Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, TikTok, and Threads at Farron Balanced. Get you right to me on all those platforms. Here's a super chat again from VMan29397 who says, you think the left will gain enough power to push universal health care by 28? I say this as a Puerto Rican who found out Puerto Rico had universal health care from 57 to 93 when statehood politicians ended it. Will they push it in 2028? I don't know. I really don't know, because unfortunately you do have a lot of people in the Democratic Party, some of them retiring, so that's good, who are still not on board with that. And that's because they do get a lot of money from the healthcare industry. And the healthcare industry, each passing year, just gets more and more rich, more powerful, and they grow more influence because of that. So it's a little bit difficult to really make this change that needs to be changed, because you are talking about wiping out effectively that massive political donor. So unless we get huge public backlash to these, coming insurance rate increases, basically to the point where they're grabbing their pitchforks, I don't think it'll happen in 28. But if the people do grab the pitchforks metaphorically, then they may not have a choice. So it's not even necessarily on the Democratic politicians or the numbers that the Democrats may have. It's kind of on the people, just throwing that out there. Y'all want this to happen, it's time to get a little loud. And that's what we need to do. So I'm all for that. I'm all for, let's organize marches. Let's get these politicians to do healthcare rallies like Bernie Sanders and AOC, of course, were doing in the early months of the Trump administration. Not necessarily on healthcare, on all issues, but something akin to that. I think we got something here. Listen, I got to get out of here, though, folks. We got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of great segments coming up later today, obviously. And again, every morning, Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. Central, going to be doing these live streams, talking about a couple issues of the day, taking questions, comments, and concerns from the chat here. If you're not subscribed, please go ahead and do so, and make sure you stay tuned throughout the rest of the day for all the good stuff we got coming. And until then, I will see y'all tomorrow.